Hi, and welcome to EnviroCentre's Green Room. Meet the people on the front lines of climate action and find out what keeps them up at night. This week, we're joined by Toon Dreessen from Architects DCA. Welcome, Toon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for coming. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Toon Dreessen. I'm an architect, president of Architects DCA. I've been a resident of Ottawa for the last 20 or more years and really come to call it home. I'm past president of the Ontario Association of Architects, and I do a lot of writing and publication on architecture and its role in society and culture and design.
Great. That's an excellent summary of yourself. Thank you. We ask all of our guests to bring one environmental fact to share. What have you brought with you today?
So today, I think the environmental fact that a lot of people don't realize is a cool little factoid, is that buildings are responsible for as much or more greenhouse gas emissions than the transportation sector. Combined, the two are about 75% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And when we talk about tackling climate change, it's fantastic to talk about electric vehicles and electric buses and all of that, but we really need to talk about our built environment as a whole and remember that if we really want to tackle the source of greenhouse gas emissions, cars and buses have a 10-year lifespan and then they get recycled or thrown away. But buildings can last for generations. They form part of our culture. They form part of our understanding of society. And because they're stand still and sit there quietly, not using any greenhouse gas emissions, and are part of our culture, we can adapt to them, we can change them over time, and we can really have a big environmental impact if we make the right and smart investments.
That's a great reminder, especially about the lifespan of vehicles versus buildings. That's a great way to think about it. So a bit of a more serious question, what climate problem keeps you up at night?
So being an architect, the things that keep me up at night are things about architecture and the built environment. And I think the thing that keeps me awake at night is the fact that the public, and particularly politicians and decision makers, they don't really understand the impact of decisions that are being made. So they make decisions on who to award projects to, where to locate buildings or new projects, how to make investments, and they're not making those decisions thinking about the impact on society. They're making them on the basis of a decision about political expediency or political decisions, but they're not making them on the decision based on what's best for people. And that applies to how we fund projects or how much funding to assign. And that we make decisions that aren't in the best interests of a long-term vision. So we're deciding to save $1 today, not realizing that it's going to cost us $10 tomorrow. And we might make that decision because we give the job to a cheaper firm, or we limit their creativity, or we set a limit on capital investment that really doesn't benefit us as a whole. And that's what keeps me up at night.
Okay, also another good answer. So with that in mind, what is the solution?
I think we need to think about embedding architectural thinking in all the decisions that we make. There have been calls to have a city architect involved in decision-making as someone who can help lead discussions and think about design and think about the decisions that we make through an architectural lens. And that should apply not just to buildings, but through procurement strategies, through design of city streets, bicycle lanes, transit planning, budgeting. All these have architectural implications. And I think we need to think things through and see things through the lens of architecture, because that's where we're going to have these big climate change impacts.
So with that solution in mind, then what's in the way of getting there?
I think that one of the things that's in the way is lackluster politics and business as usual decision making. When we base our budget on what we spent last year, when we think about how we're going to plan our city and we base it on the interests of decisions that aren't in our best interest. We see this debate that happens in politics about suburban sprawl and expansion and new development, and how these decisions are going to get made. We're not making decisions that are in the best interest of people. We need to have more YIMBYism, right? Yes, in my backyard. We need to open ourselves to the idea that communities can change and that neighborhoods are going to evolve. And we need to be open to those conversations. And we need to hold both our elected officials and our planning departments, people who are making these decisions, we need to hold them to account for the decisions that are being made.
So you've already touched there on a couple of things that folks can do, but just generally, how can people help?
So I think people can help by being more aware of the effect of architecture in their community. There are architects everywhere. Ask us questions, have us be involved in things, get us to contribute and be part of communications within cities, within conversations, within community design plans. Start making planning decisions and supporting good design that supports good architecture. People talk about how boring and bland a building might be, but let's talk about why it is that way. Is it the planning decisions that are behind it? Is it the procurement strategy that's behind it? Why is it the way it is? And let's start advocating to make a difference. I think we need to recognize that the hashtag of shop local is not just about your corner store or your local farmer's market, but it's about hiring skilled local talent and hiring that talent locally within the city. There's loads of good talent in the city that goes untapped, that doesn't get used. And why is that? And it's decisions about contracting and contract law. It's decisions about how we go about creating the city that we are aspiring to, and how can we change that conversation. And I think that what people can do is to advocate for that change and advocate with their politicians and their planning departments to have good design be part of a contribution to the city we aspire to.
A great reminder to expand the shop local to all of the services. There's so many great services available in Ottawa and folks doing great work. So that's a great reminder. So what is the good future?
So a good future is that there's continued growing awareness of the role of good design in our society. We talk about this, and I think people are more aware of this than ever before. And people get the connection between good design and good community well-being. People talk about, how great it is to have a neighborhood with lots of street trees and walkable neighborhoods. Well, why don't we build those? Let's have that as part of our future, and let's advocate for those things, because we know those are fantastic places. When we go to Barcelona, or we go to Venice, or we go to Paris, or we go to Copenhagen, we take these amazing photographs of our vacations. Well, let's bring those here, and let's have the kind of city that we can be really proud of, places that are walkable and friendly and filled with street trees, and that are cycling friendly and that are good for our sense of well-being and our sense of place. Let's make our awareness of our city and our city's potential and raise that awareness so that everybody's aware of it and contributes to the city we aspire to, one that's equitable, one that's diverse, one that's inclusive, one that's healthy, and one that's here for generations to come.
That's it for this week's Green Room. Thanks so much for joining us as we get to the heart of climate action. You can find out more about our work and sign up for our newsletter at EnviroCentre.ca. Follow us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.